Okay, this is a video on percentages of amounts using a non-calculator method. So the trick with percentage of amounts, the key percentage that you need to be able to find is 10%. 10% of a number is basically, the way you find it is you divide the number by 10. So if I was to find 10% of 50, well, I would just do 50 divided by 10, which is 5. If I was to do 10% of 742, I would just divide that by 10, which is 74.2. So we can find 10% quite easily, and then from that number we should be able to find other percentages. So if you can find 10%, you can half that to find 5%. You can find 20% by doubling it. You can find 30% by timesing it by 3. You can manipulate a lot by just finding 10%. Okay, so let's do some together. First one, 80% of 30. So if I know I can find 10%, so if I know 10% of 30, well, I just divide that by 10, so I know the 10% is 3. And then to get 80%, I just need to times that by the 8, because 10 times 8 is 80%. So we just need to do the 3 times the 8, which is 24. So I just did 3 times the 8 to get 24. So our answer, 80% of 30, is 24. A bag of sugar contains 420 grams. A special offer packet contains an extra 15%. How much extra sugar is in the special offer package? So if we find we need 15%, so I can split 15 up. I can first find 10% of 420 grams. I know I just got to divide that by 10 to get 42. I can then find 5% by halving that answer. So I can half the 10%, I can half 42, which is 21. So all I did there is I halved it, because half of 10 is 5. Then I can find 15% by adding those top two. Okay, because 10% add 5% gives me 15%. So 15% of the 420, just need to add the 42 and the 21 to give me 63. So I just added 42 and 21 to get 63. A new car is priced at £7,500. It's in a sale and it's been reduced by 20%. Calculate the reduction in price. So it was 7,500 and it's gone down by 20%. So if I first find 10%, always start with 10%. So 10% of the 7,500, I know I just got to divide that by 10, so that's going to be 750. And then to get 20%, I just need to double that, because 10 doubled is 20, so I'm just going to times that by 2. So I need to do the 750 times 2, which is 1,500. So it's been reduced by 1,500. You have to read your questions carefully, because sometimes they ask for the new price, or sometimes they just ask for how much is it being reduced by. Okay, but if they ask for the new price, we would just take those two numbers away. Okay, calculate 3%. So if I know that 10% of 600 is 60, I can also find 1% quite easily by dividing that 10% by 10. Okay, so to find 10%, you divide by 10. To find 1%, you would divide by 10 again. So we're essentially dividing it by 100. So 1% is dividing by 100. So 1% is 6. Well, if I know 1% is 6, I can find 3% of 600. I just need to times that by 3. So I'm going to do 6 3s, which are 18. So it's going to be $18. Mary wins £400. She gives 50% to her mother. Mary gives 20% to her sister, and she keeps the rest. How much does each person get? Okay, 50% is quite an easy one to do. 50% is just half of the amount. Okay, so 50% of £400 is just half of the £400. So which is £200. So that's what her mother gets. Her mum gets £200. It's quite generous of it. Then she gives 20% to her sister. Okay, so if we know, we can find 10% and then we can just double it. 10% of 400 divided by 10, so 40. So 20% of the 400, we need to double that to get 80. So she gives 80 to her sister and she keeps the rest. So she started with 400. We're taking away the £280 she's given away. That leaves us with £120 for herself. Barry's salary is £14,000 and he's due to get an increase of 5%. Calculate how much this increase will be. You can do 5% a number of different ways. We can do 1% and times it by 5. We could do 10% and then half it, or you could do 50% and divide it by 10. There's lots of different ways when you can work with percentages and they're all correct. My favourite way is just to start with 10%. Okay, so 10% of the 14,000, I just divide that by 10, so I knock a 0 off, which is 1,400. And then I know 5% is going to be half of that, so that gives me £700. Harry wants to buy a motorbike that costs £600. He saves 30% of his wages each month. Each month Harry earns £400. Calculate how many months it will take for him to save enough money. So if he's saving 30% of his wages, and wages is £400, we need the 30% of the 400. So we need 30% of 400. So to do that, I'm going to find my 10%, my favourite thing to find. Just divide it by 10, so that's 40. To get 30%, I want to times that by 3, because 10 times 3 is 30. So I want to times that 40 by 3, which is 120. Just do 4 times 3 and then stick a 0 on the end. So if he can save £120 each month and he needs 600, we want how many 120s go into 600. It wouldn't take you long to carry on adding up 120s, but you could also do, cut off my 2 zeros, 60 divided by 12. 12 times 7 not too hard. So it will give us 5. There are 20,000 fans at a football match. 12% of the fans are women. Work out how many women attended the match. It's very sexist. I'm sure more than 12% of women go to football matches. Right, so 12%, we can find 10% of the 20,000 by taking off one of those zeros. So 10% is 2,000. I now need that extra 2. So I've already got 10, I need the 2%. I could find 1% next. And so that is dividing this by 10. So that is 200. I could then find the 2% by doubling that. So double 200, so I'm timesing this by 2. The 1% I'm timesing by 2, which is 400. And they need the 12%, so we're going to do the 10%, add the 2%. So I want to do the 2,000, add the 400. So 12% is going to be 2,400. So I just added these two numbers. Okay, calculate 75% of 300. 75%. You could do 10%, times it by 7, 5%, add it on. Or there's a quicker way for 75%, because I could find 50%, and then I know half of 50 is 25. So I could find 50% and 25% and add them. Or you could find 25% and then take it off. Let's do 50% of 300, so that's just half of 300. Don't forget 50% is half in a number, which is 150. and then 25% of the 300 is half of that again. So I want to half my 150 to get 75. So then 75% is just going to add those together. So we got to add 150 and 75 to give us 225. Okay, at train station, 35% of trains are late. In that week, there were 440 trains. How many were on time? Well, if 35% are late, that means 65% are on time. So we need 65% of 440 trains. So we can do 65% in a number of different ways. We can split that, first of all, 10%. So we know 10% of the 440 is 44. You could times that by 6 now, which might take me a bit of a while. So I'm not going to times by 6. Can't bother to do that. So to make my life easier, I'm going to find 50% and I can add those together to get 60 then. So 50% of 440, just need to half it. So I'll get 220. So I've got the 60% now. I just need the 5%. So I'm going to half my 10 or divide my 50 by 10%. So it gives me 22. I'm going to just add all those together to get 65 now. 65% of 440, what does they all add up together? 286. Work out 98% of 700. So don't do the 10%, times it by 9, 1% times by 8. That's way too long. Because this is that's very close to 100%. I could find 2% and then take it away. So I could find 2% and then subtract it to get the 98%. So if I know 1% of 700 divided by 100, remember, is 7. So I know 2% of 700, so I need to double that, which is 14. I can just do my 700, take away my 2%, and that will leave me with 98%. So you can go backwards as well. Companies hosting a charity meal. 800 people work for the company. It's estimated 70% of the employees will attend. It's expected that if an employee attends, they'll bring a partner. The cost of attending the meal is £5. How much money will be raised? This is only going to be an estimate for them, but first of all, we need 70% of the people that are going to attend. So we need 70% of 800. So I'm going to start with 10%. My starting point is always 10. So to find 10%, we're just going to divide by 10. So that's going to be 80. Then I'm going to just jump straight to 70% because I can do 8 times 7. So I just want to times this by 7. So I'm going to do 8 times 7, which is 56, and stick my 0 on the end. So I know 560 expected, but they're going to bring a partner. So we got the 560 plus an extra 560, they're partners. We're assuming people are going to bring people, which is 1,120. So if each person, the cost of attending the meal is £5, we're assuming you pay per person. I'm going to assume that anyway. So we're going to need to do the 1,120 times our £5, which gives me 5600. Okay, wouldn't it take you long to times by 5? You could have drawn out your grid method. 1120 times by 5 wouldn't have taken you long. You should have got 5600. Okay, Darren claims if he increases a number by 10% and increases his answer by 10%, that you would be increasing by 20% overall. Ooh, they like doing questions like this. So, pick a number to prove it. Okay, so if I pick a nice, easy number to work with, like 100, it's a nice, solid number. So if I increase 100 by 10%, I know that 10% of 100 is divided by 10 is 10. So I increase 100 by 10%. I'm going to add 100, add to the 10 to get 110. Then I want to increase that by 10%. So I want to increase 110 by 10%. So I know 10% of 110, we could divide it by 10 to get 11. So I'm going to add 11 and 110 to get 121. So I've got 121. Let's see if that's the same as increasing it by 20%. So increase 100 by 20%. I know 10% is 10, so 20% is 20. So I'm going to add the 20 to the 100 to get 120. So nope, he is incorrect. So it's added an extra pound for this one. So increasing the number and then increasing it again is not the same as increasing it by 20%. They love doing trick questions like that. Some students sit an exam. The pass mark is 80%. There are 40 marks in each test. Here are the results. What fraction of students pass the exam? Well, if you need 80% to pass, and it's out to 40, let's work out 80% of the 40. Let's see how many marks you need to pass. So we know 10%. We divide the 40 by 10, so 4. So 80%, I'm going to times that by 8 to get 32. So you need 32 marks or more to pass. So he didn't. She did. Nope. Yep. Nope. So only 2 out of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 passed. That's a high pass mark, isn't it? Work out 45% of 540. You could do 45 a couple of different ways. We could find 10%, times it by the 4, then the 5% and add it on. Or we could do 50%, take away our 5%. You can do it lots of different ways. Let's do a little bit different. Let's do our 50% and then we'll take away the 5%. 50% of the 540. So don't forget 50% is half in it, so I need to half 540, which gives me 270. Then I can do my 5% of the 540, so I'm essentially dividing this by 10. So I'm going to take that 0 off, which is 27. So 45%, I can basically take those away. So 45% of the 540 is I'm going to subtract those. So I'm going to borrow 10 take away 7 is 3, 6 take away 2 is 4. It's going to be 243. Two glasses contain orange juice. A 400 milliliter glass is 40% full. 300 is half full. Which glass contains less orange juice? Well, if this one's half full, that's only got 150 milliliters. And to see this one, we're going to need 40% of the 400. So 10% divided by 10, 40. 40% times that by 4, 160. So I'm timing that by 4. So let's go 160. And the less is this one. So 300 milliliter glass has less. Okay, last one. In a country, people have to pay tax on their salary as shown. Well, yeah, in every country. 30% of all earnings over £10,000. It's gone up loads since then. This is an old... Oh, yeah, it's 2016. That's way old. So he earns 16,000. How much tax does he pay? So he only pays after 10,000. So he's got the 16,000. We take off the 10. So he only pays tax on £6,000 he earns. Okay. So we want 30% of the 6,000. So we know 10% is we divide it by 10. So take off a 0. And then 30%, we just times that by 3. So 6 3s are 18, adding 2 zeros. So he's going to pay £1,800. Don't forget to let me know if you want any particular topic, any videos, and I'll do one, okay? Put it on Twitter or ask me in person.